The courtroom was packed that morning, the air heavy, filled with whispers and the faint shuffle of papers. The case had already drawn national attention, and today was the final hearing. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but journalists lined the hallway, waiting to capture the faces of everyone involved. At the center of it all sat a small girl, Emma Grace, barely 9 years old, her tiny hands gripping the edge of the wooden table. Her soft brown hair was tied neatly in a ponytail, and beside her, sitting quietly with alert golden eyes, was her golden retriever, Buddy. Buddy wasn't just a dog. He was Emma's lifeline, her therapy and service dog, trained to sense her anxiety, panic attacks, and most importantly, to help her communicate when she couldn't find the words. Across the courtroom sat Richard Hall, a tall man in a dark suit, Emma's father. His eyes were fixed on her, but they held no warmth, only cold calculation. Emma trembled every time their eyes met. At the judge's bench sat Judge Margaret Wilson, a woman known for her strict professionalism. But even she couldn't hide the softness in her eyes as she looked at the little girl and her loyal companion. "Emma," said the judge gently, "you don't have to be afraid, sweetheart. You're safe here, all right?" Emma nodded slightly but didn't speak. Her lips quivered, her eyes darting to her lawyer, a kind young woman named Sarah Blake. Sarah bent down beside her, whispering, "Remember, you can use your signals with Buddy. Just breathe, okay?" Emma blinked once, their agreed signal for, "I'm ready." The courtroom waited in silence. 2 months earlier, Emma had been found alone at a park, crying and clutching Buddy's leash. Her neighbors had called the police after hearing shouting from her home. Her mother, Laura Grace, had been found unconscious, severely injured after an argument with Richard. It was later revealed that he had a long history of abuse, both physical and emotional. Laura survived, but the trauma had scarred Emma deeply. Since that day, she hadn't spoken a single word. Not at school. Not at home. Not even to her mother. The doctors called it selective mutism, triggered by trauma. But Buddy, the golden retriever trained for therapy and emotional support, became her voice. Through small hand signals, Emma communicated everything: fear, comfort, distress, even love. Now, in this courtroom, her voice was needed the most. Judge Wilson leaned forward. "Emma, can you tell us what happened that night?" Emma's hands trembled. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came. She looked down at Buddy, who rested his chin gently on her lap. Sarah nodded to her encouragingly. Emma lifted her right hand and tapped her knee twice, Buddy's signal. Instantly, Buddy sat up straight, his eyes focused on her face. She made another small motion, touching her left shoulder and then her heart. The dog let out a soft whine and placed his paw over her leg. "What does that signal mean?" Sarah swallowed hard, her voice trembling. "Your Honor," Emma just signaled to Buddy that she's scared because her father used to yell before he hurt her mother. A wave of murmurs filled the room. The judge lifted her hand. "Order." Richard shifted uncomfortably in his seat, jaw tight. Emma continued, using small signals only Buddy could recognize. She raised her right hand slightly, fingers trembling. Buddy tilted his head, letting out a quiet bark, once, then twice. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "That signal means there were 2 times he hit her mother that night." Judge Wilson's pen paused midair. "Emma," the judge said, voice soft as silk, "you're doing very well. You're very brave, sweetheart. Please, continue." Emma's small hands rested again on Buddy's fur. She drew a little circle with her finger on his back, then tapped twice near his ear. Buddy whimpered and looked toward Richard, letting out a low growl. The courtroom froze. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. "Your Honor, that means, he tried to hurt Emma too." The judge's eyes darkened. Richard shot up from his chair. "This is ridiculous. You're letting a dog testify now?" "Sit down, Mr. Hall," Judge Wilson ordered sharply. I'm not listening to this circus. That mutt is trained to act on command. Enough. The judge's gavel struck the desk like thunder. The sound echoed in the silence, and for a moment, the only movement came from Buddy, who gently pressed his nose against Emma's hand, reassuring her. Tears rolled down Laura's cheeks in the front row. She had begged the court to let Emma use her therapy dog in testimony, knowing it was the only way her daughter could communicate. Now, watching her little girl so brave, she sobbed quietly, covering her mouth. Emma looked up, her eyes met her mother's, and for a brief second, something flickered behind those frightened eyes. Courage. She lifted her small hand and gave Buddy another signal, brushing her fingers across her left cheek, then forming a small heart with both hands. Buddy responded by laying his head across her lap and whining softly. Sarah whispered, "Your Honor, that's Emma saying she remembers her mother crying, and she wants her to know she loves her." The entire courtroom went still. Even the judge's eyes shimmered. For the next 10 minutes, Emma continued her testimony, through signals, touches, and Buddy's gentle responses. Every movement told a story, of nights filled with fear, of shattered dishes, of muffled screams, and of the way Buddy would lay beside her bed when the shouting started. She didn't need words, her courage spoke louder than any voice could. When she finally lowered her hands and hugged Buddy tightly, the silence in the courtroom felt sacred, heavy with emotion. Judge Wilson cleared her throat, struggling to keep her composure. "Emma, sweetheart," she said softly, "you did so well. You're safe now, okay?" Emma nodded, her small fingers clutching Buddy's fur, but before the judge could continue, Emma suddenly gave another signal, a sharp tap on her knee and two fingers pointing to her lips. Buddy stood instantly, facing the judge's bench, ears perked. Everyone turned, startled. The judge blinked. "What is it, Ms. Blake?" Sarah, confused, whispered, That's not a fear signal." She looked at Emma, her eyes wide. It's her signal that she wants to say something." The entire courtroom went silent again. Emma slowly stood up, holding on to Buddy's leash. Her knees wobbled, but she stayed firm. She took one trembling step forward, her eyes locked on the judge. Then, in a voice no one had heard in months, small, shaky, but clear, she whispered, "Please, don't let him hurt my mom again." The words cut through the silence like lightning. Gasps filled the courtroom. Laura broke down completely, her sobs echoing. Even the judge covered her mouth for a moment, tears slipping down her face. Judge Wilson's voice trembled slightly when she finally spoke. "Thank you, Emma. I promise, he will never hurt either of you again." Richard's lawyer tried to object, but the judge silenced him immediately. "I've seen enough," she said firmly. "This court finds that full custody of Emma Grace will remain with her mother, Laura Grace. Mr. Hall is hereby denied visitation rights and will face sentencing for domestic assault and child endangerment." The gavel came down with finality. But the courtroom wasn't watching Richard anymore. They were watching the little girl, the one who had found her voice through the love of her dog. Outside, as the doors opened and the media swarmed, Emma clung to Buddy's neck. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, but all Emma could see was the sunlight spilling across the courthouse steps. For the first time in a long time, it didn't feel harsh or blinding. It felt warm. Laura knelt down, wrapping her arms around her daughter. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "You saved both of us." Emma smiled faintly, pressing her cheek against her mother's. Buddy wagged his tail, resting his head against both of them. Weeks later, a video clip of the courtroom moment went viral, the moment when the little girl gave her dog a signal, and everything changed. Millions watched as Buddy responded, as the girl found her courage, as justice was served. Letters poured in from around the world, people thanking Emma for her bravery, for reminding them that courage doesn't always roar, sometimes, it whispers. Emma returned to school slowly, with Buddy always by her side. She still didn't talk much, but when she did, her voice was steady. One day, her teacher asked her what made her speak that day in court. Emma smiled softly and said, "Because Buddy looked at me like I could." That night, as she lay in bed, Buddy curled up beside her as always. The moonlight spilled through the curtains, touching her face. She turned over, hugged him close, and whispered, "We did it, Buddy. We really did." His tail thumped gently against the bed, and Emma finally drifted to sleep, safe, free, and unafraid. In the quiet of that small room, one thing was certain. Sometimes heroes don't wear capes or uniforms. Sometimes they have 4 paws, golden fur, and the power to help a broken little girl find her voice again.